Hello and welcome to the Genuine Learning Blog. My name is Melissa Galasso, and today we're going to talk about a brand new exposure draft from the GASB. And this one is dealing with disclosures. So a lot of times we have to focus on updating our concept statement, and this is something that they've had as a project for quite some time. They did roundtables to try to get feedback. Now, this one's a little different because it's focusing on the conceptual framework. So let's dive on in here. So this is going to be a concept statement. It was issued in February 2020, and comments are due April 17th of 2020. And the title is Communication Methods in General Purpose External Financial Reports that Contain Basic Financial Statements, notes to the financial statement. So I just called it GASB disclosures. And this is a concept statement. So it is the objectives and principles that are fundamental to financial reporting. It will not end up being a concept, or sorry, it will not end up being a GASB statement itself. It's going to be a part of updating the conceptual framework. We already have concept statement number 3, which is this concept of basic financial statement disclosures. However, we're updating key paragraphs within those. And so we're not replacing it, we're just updating paragraphs, superseding paragraphs 35 to 39. So the first thing this does is define the purpose of the notes, right? So that's really the first thing that we're doing is trying to understand why do we have notes. And it says the purpose of notes to the financial statement is to provide information that explains, describes, or supplements the financial statements, right? So starting with the financial statements in mind, providing additional description, supplement, etc. And here's a key term here, is essential to users. And we're going to define that word essential shortly, right, is essential to users in making economic, social, or political decisions, because remember, this is GASB, or assessing accountability. Going back to why GASB accounting standards are different than FASB accounting standards, accountability is one of those key items. And so they're really trying to play that in here to the standards. Notes to the statements are integral to the basic financial statement, necessary to make the financial statements complete, right? So that's what the notes are. That's their purpose. Now, one of the things that they're going to do is provide some updated criteria. So what are we going to do? What are the criteria when we're disclosing information? Well, they're going to provide us, and we're going to dive into each of these, the types of information we should disclose, the types of information we should not, that are not appropriate to disclose, and then the degree of importance, how does that impact the disclosure? So let's start off with what are the types of information that we should have, right? Descriptions of the accounting and finance related policies underlying the amounts recognized. So an explanation of the theory behind them. More details about or explanations of amounts recognized, right? So providing detail that we couldn't get by looking at the financial statements themselves. Information about financial position or inflows and outflows that do not meet the criteria for recognition, right? So when we're looking at those items that don't meet the criteria, providing information about those items, and then other finance-related information associated with accountability, one of the key elements of governmental GAAP. They could be quantitative or narrative, right? So we don't have to always have something be a number. It could also be qualitative. So what is not appropriate? Subjective assessments of the effects of reported information, predictions about the event of future events, or the effects of future events on future financial position, or general or educational information that is not specific to the government, right? So we shouldn't be repeating a textbook, right? It should be unique and specific to this government that we're trying to provide. So we use the term essential, right? So when we're looking at it, it's essential as part of that key purpose. And so the term essential conveys the degree of importance that the information contained should possess. And when we think about these, notes are essential to users making economic, social, or political decisions, right? So what do we know? Well, when is information essential? Well, it's going to have the following characteristics. Evidence that is being utilized in users' analysis for making decisions or assessing accountability, right? That makes it essential. In addition, evidence that if the information became available, users would modify their analysis or analyses for making decisions or assessing accountability to incorporate them, right? So it's either information that is currently being used or would be used if available. That's what makes something essential to the notes. Now, when we're looking at this, the evidence supporting the determination of whether something is essential should be applied to individual items. Each item has to be assessed for possessing one of those characteristics of essentiality, and the use of professional judgment may be necessary for determining whether an item of information is or would be used, right? Because, right, there's not a right answer here, right? So some people might have it, some might not, some might consider it, some might not. And so as a result, right, what is the overall, right? So on average, right, who is or not using that? It also provides information about preparation by reporting units, right? So information disclosed in the notes of the financial statements at minimum should correspond to the reporting units presented in the financial statements, right? So when we're going back to this at the reporting unit level. And then obviously everyone talks about the cost benefit analysis. So an evaluation of expected benefits and perceived costs associated with this disclosure should be conducted separately and in addition to the evaluation of the overall expected benefits and perceived cost. So we have an analysis of recognition, for example, and then we would have an evaluation of the note disclosure. Information that meets the criteria for notes to the financial statement and whose expected benefits justify their perceived cost should be reported. And the presentation as in supporting information is not an adequate substitute for disclosures in the notes, right? So they're kind of giving us some guide rails here. Now, what's coming next, right? So this is a concept statement. This is the theory. GASB updated their conceptual framework recently as well related to note disclosures, and then did a series of updates in ASUs to apply that to the current note disclosure requirements, but also going forward. So we would expect to see that also from GASB as well. All right, so that is it for this week's Genuine Learning blog. I hope you guys enjoyed this. If this is something that you are passionate about, especially in the note disclosure world, we would encourage you to provide that feedback to GASB by April so that they can have your feedback and take it into consideration going forward. It was a pleasure having you. Hope to see you on a future blog. Have a great day, guys. Bye-bye.